If you ever hear violin music coming from an empty room, don't go looking for the player. I used to think that was just something people said to sound spooky at a bonfire. Now I know better. I know it because of my old roommate, and because of 3 weeks in October that I still can't fully explain. 3 weeks that started with a song and ended with something standing in our kitchen that had no reflection in the microwave door. This is his story. I'm just the one who lived to tell it. My roommate's name was Eli. We met my sophomore year at a state school in upstate New York, back when I was subletting a room above a laundromat because the dorms were full. Eli answered my Craigslist ad for a roommate 2 weeks into the semester, paid first and last month in cash, and never once mentioned a single family member. Not a mom, not a dad, not a cousin twice removed. Nothing. He was polite about it, in the way people are polite when they've had a lot of practice deflecting a question. If you asked where he was from, he'd say, here and there. If you asked what his parents did, he'd change the subject so smoothly you wouldn't notice until an hour later. Eli was the kind of quiet that makes a room feel bigger. He'd go entire days saying maybe 6 words, but when he did talk, people listened because it always mattered. He had this stillness to him, like he was permanently listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. And he played the violin, not took lessons as a kid. Violin, actually played it. The kind of playing that stops conversations in restaurants. I never asked where he learned. By that point, I'd learned not to ask Eli much of anything. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted textile mill from the 1890s, the kind of building landlords love to call historic, and tenants love to call the reason my radiator sounds like it's dying. Exposed brick, drafty windows, a fire escape that led to a flat section of roof nobody was technically supposed to use. We used it anyway. Eli liked to sit up there at night with his violin, looking out over the river. I'd sometimes stand in the doorway and listen, and something about watching him up there, alone, small against all that dark, made me feel like he was the loneliest person I'd ever met, even surrounded by a whole friend group. We didn't think much of it back then. We went to class, ordered too much late-night pizza, made fun of horror movies. I remember one night on that roof, half joking, saying, if ghosts are real, they should just show up already. Stop being shy about it. I think about that a lot now. Be careful what you say into the dark. Sometimes it's listening. For most of that first year, nothing was wrong. Eli went to class mostly. He played violin at night, mostly on the roof, sometimes in his room. We had a routine. Coffee before 9 a.m. lectures, cheap Thai food on Fridays, movie nights where he'd fall asleep before the 3rd act every single time. He never went home for breaks. When I asked why, he said his family situation was complicated and left it there. I let it go, because that's what you do for a friend. You let some doors stay closed. I loved him like a brother. That part matters. Remember that part. It started small, the way these things always do. I'd been gone a week for my grandmother's funeral back in Ohio. When I came back, Eli was different. Thinner, paler. He barely said hello. That night, he went up to the roof and played for almost 2 hours, way longer than usual. And around midnight, the melody changed. It stopped sounding like music and started sounding like a conversation, like he was answering something. I called up to him twice. You coming down? Both times he just said, go to sleep. I'll be up later. In a voice that sounded like it belonged to someone very tired of being awake. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a sound I can only describe as wrong. A series of sharp cracks, like knuckles popping, except deep and wet, like something breaking that shouldn't bend. I opened my eyes and saw Eli hanging upside down from the ceiling fan, not standing on something, not climbing it, hanging from it, limbs splayed out like a puppet with its strings cut, his head lolling toward me, eyes open and locked on mine. For maybe 3 full seconds, I forgot how to breathe. Then his neck twisted, a slow, deliberate turn that no human neck should do. And I was already moving, already screaming, already at the door. I ran downstairs and pounded on our landlady's door until she opened it. Everything after that is fog. When I came back to myself, I was on her couch, and Eli was sitting in the corner of the room, calm, blinking at me like he had no idea what had happened, like the last 2 hours had never occurred for him at all. I told myself it was a nightmare, a stress dream, grief messing with my head after the funeral. I almost believed it, until it started happening to other people too. Our landlady, Mrs. Alvarez, started sleeping badly. She told me, voice shaking, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she never drank, that she dreamed of Eli sitting on her chest, hands around her throat, his face completely blank, not angry, just empty, like a mannequin wearing a person's face. She said she couldn't move, couldn't scream, until her husband's hand brushed her arm in his sleep, and she finally broke free of it and screamed for real. I told myself, just a dream. Then things in the apartment started moving. Pots left on the stove would be found on the floor. Furniture scraped across the living room at night with nobody touching it. Picture frames turned face down. None of it ever happened while we were watching. Always just after, always just out of sight, like something was testing how far it could push before we noticed. One night, I woke up and Eli's bed was empty. I checked the bathroom, empty. The apartment door was open. I followed the cold draft to the fire escape and looked up. He was on the roof again, and this time, he wasn't alone. There was a figure standing in front of him, a woman, or something shaped like one, pale, faceless in the dark, dressed in something that moved like fabric, even though there was no wind. Eli had his violin raised, playing something so mournful it didn't sound like music anymore, more like grief translated into sound. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just watched, frozen, until a scream from downstairs broke whatever was holding me. Mrs. Alvarez again, another attack. And when I looked back up, the figure was gone, like fog burning off in sunlight. Eli didn't remember any of it the next morning. We brought in help. First, it was a friend of Mrs. Alvarez, a woman who did energy clearings, burned sage through the apartment, and left with a worried look on her face and no real answers. Then Mrs. Alvarez found someone more serious, a man named Father Cole, a retired priest who'd apparently done deliverance work for decades before the archdiocese quietly asked him to stop. He didn't do this for money. He did it, he said, because some things don't stop just because the church stopped believing in them. He walked through the apartment slowly, methodically, running his hand along door frames, pausing at the threshold to the roof, like he could feel something there the rest of us couldn't. Then he sat down across from Eli and just looked at him, really looked, for almost a full minute, while Eli looked back, unblinking. "This is worse than I thought," Father Cole finally said. He opened a worn leather bag, took out a small Bible, and began to read aloud, quiet at first, then steadily louder. Within minutes, the temperature in the room dropped hard enough that I could see my breath. The curtains, though the windows were shut, began whipping like there was a storm trapped inside the apartment. Eli's hands curled into claws. His whole body started shaking. Then, his head snapped up, and his eyes had gone completely white. No iris, no pupil, just white from lid to lid. Mrs. Alvarez grabbed my arm so hard it left marks. Father Cole kept reading, louder now, almost shouting the words. The apartment door slammed shut on its own. Something in the corner of the room made a low sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a moan, like it was coming from somewhere behind the wall instead of inside the room. Then Eli screamed. It didn't sound like one voice. It sounded like several, layered on top of each other. And then he collapsed, unconscious, and the room went dead silent, except for our breathing. Father Cole knelt beside Eli for a long moment before he spoke again. "There isn't one spirit here," he said. "There are two." Nobody said anything. He continued. "One wants to hurt him. The other one has been protecting him. And not just him. All of you. The one you saw on the roof. The woman. That's the protector. She's been standing between Eli and something far worse for a long time." He explained it slowly, like he was trying to make sure we understood every piece. The protector spirit couldn't get near Eli whenever he wore a small charm the first priest had given him. A cheap medallion Eli had stopped wearing a few weeks earlier, thinking it was just superstition. But without it blocking her too, she couldn't reach him either. And the hostile spirit, locked out of Eli directly, had started lashing out at the rest of us instead. The pots, the furniture, Mrs. Alvarez. "She's not here to hurt him," Father Cole said quietly. "She's been trying to shield him his whole life." Then his expression darkened further. "But this isn't new. Whatever's happening here didn't start this month or this year. This goes back to Eli's past. Something from long before either of you knew him. And until we understand what that is, this doesn't end." "So what do we do?" Mrs. Alvarez whispered. Father Cole looked toward the window, toward the first hint of grey dawn light. "I come back tonight, right before sunrise, and I bring them both out into the open. Because whatever's chasing Eli isn't going to stop just because we're afraid to look at it." We didn't sleep that day. None of us could. Father Cole came back that night with two other people, a younger priest and an older woman he introduced only as someone who's done this before. They set up in the living room, moved the furniture back, lit candles around the perimeter like a kind of quiet, careful geometry. Eli sat in the middle of it, pale and shaking, aware enough this time to be terrified. The reading started slow. Then the temperature dropped so fast, frost formed on the inside of the windows. The lights flickered, died, came back weaker. Something unseen slammed against the apartment door, hard enough to crack the frame. And then she appeared, the woman in white, standing behind Eli's chair, one hand resting on his shoulder, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. For the first time, I saw her face. It wasn't frightening. It was sad. Achingly, permanently sad. The kind of sadness that outlives whoever's carrying it. The air near the door thickened, blackened, took a shape none of us wanted to look at directly. Something tall, wrong-jointed, radiating a kind of cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Father Cole's voice rose to a near shout. The younger priest dropped to his knees, praying fast under his breath. Eli started convulsing, and the woman in white tightened her grip on his shoulder, like she was holding him to the earth by force. Then Eli's mouth opened, and a voice came out that wasn't his. "He's mine. He's always been mine. She only delayed it." The black shape lunged. The woman in white stepped fully in front of Eli, and for one impossible second, the whole room went white, silent, weightless, like the inside of a held breath. Then it was over. The cold broke. The candles guttered back to life. Eli slumped forward, unconscious but breathing, and the black shape was gone. The woman in white was gone too. Here's the part that still keeps me up some nights. While Eli was unconscious, Father Cole asked us to leave the room so he could finish alone. Mrs. Alvarez and I waited in the hallway, and through the door, faintly, we heard him talking, not praying, talking, like he was having a conversation. When he came out an hour later, his face had changed, older somehow, in a single night. "I know who she is now," he said quietly. "The protector." He looked at me carefully before he said the next part, like he was deciding whether I could handle it. "She died in this building in 1994, in the room you sleep in now." I felt the floor tilt a little. She was a mother. Her son was taken from her. The details don't matter, only that it was violent and it was wrong, and she never got the chance to protect him when it counted. She spent 30 years since then attaching herself to young men who remind her of him, watching them, guarding them, because the thing that hurt her son, the thing we felt in this room tonight, has been hunting the same kind of victim ever since. And every time it finds one, she finds him too. "And Eli," I started. "Eli isn't her son," Father Cole said, "but he's close enough that she chose him." He paused. "She'll keep choosing people. Every time it comes back. That's not a comfort, and it isn't over. It's a cycle, and cycles like this don't end with one night of prayer. They end when whatever set them in motion is finally settled, and we still don't know what that is." Eli moved out about a month later. Different city, no forwarding address, the kind of disappearing act only someone truly haunted knows how to do cleanly. We still talk sometimes, but he never brings up that October, and I've learned not to push. I moved out not long after. New apartment, new roommate, normal microwave, normal life. Except, about 6 months ago, I was walking home late and passed a stranger playing violin on a street corner for tips. I didn't think anything of it until I got close enough to hear the tune. That same aching, mournful melody Eli used to play on the roof, note for note, a song I never heard anywhere else in my life. I stopped. I looked at the player. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, over my shoulder, at something standing just behind me in the reflection of a dark storefront window. I didn't turn around. I just started walking, faster than I meant to, and I didn't look back until I was 3 blocks away and completely alone. At least, I'm pretty sure I was alone. If you ever hear violin music coming from somewhere, it shouldn't be. Don't go looking for the player. And whatever you do, don't look behind you to see who's listening too.